If you take a look at my channel, you can see that I love Scooby Doo. And I've posted a lot of Scooby Doo review videos with a similar theme between them, from voice actor episodes to convention adventures to baseball themed episodes and to them literally going into space. Very few of those I talk about my favorite episode. So that's what I will be doing in this video. I won't be going over Get a Clue and 13 Ghosts of Scooby Doo, mainly because I haven't watched them fully through. I also won't cover the Scrappy and Scooby Doo show, because I already covered my favorite, and that was Demon of the Dugout. And I also won't be covering Guess Who, because both of my favorites I've already talked about. Space Station Scooby and The Hunt of a Thousand Voices. Now with all of the ones I won't talk about out of the way, let's get into my favorite episodes of Scooby Doo from each series, that is. First up, from Where Are You? That's Snow Ghost. The episode starts off with a shot of cabins, which then pans over to a howling wolf. It cuts hands over footprints, and then it slowly reveals to us the Snow Ghost. The gang arrive to Wolf's End Lodge. Thanks to Daphne, we learn
what a run-down and creepy place for a weekend of skiing.
They go inside and meet Mr. Greenway and Mr. Lee. They give off a suspicious when they're just laughing. Mr. Greenway warns them of the Snow Ghost. They all say,
Snow Ghost!
Shaggy goes to lock the windows with the Snow Ghost standing right there. They all get on Velma and she runs off, grabbing Daphne on the way out. They get on the snow cars and follow the footprints. They get to a chasm that the ghost just flies over, and then they tell Scooby to go check out the cave. He goes behind a tree, he goes into a bush, trying to hide. And then he becomes a snowball and finds the cave, and they go inside. Inside, they find some stuff and deduct,
well, it's for sure the Snow Ghost doesn't live here.
Velma bangs a gong, and we see the owner. And the owner tells us the Snow Ghost seeks revenge. And then we get a little bit of a flashback on how the Snow Ghost became the Snow Ghost. They leave and they find more footprints covered in sawdust. They go to the nearest sawmill. They split up. The Snow Ghost looms behind some wood. Velma gets taken and Shaggy falls through a trap door. He goes to save Velma on a log going towards the saw. After some saw tug of war between Scooby and the Snow Ghost goes flying, and Beaver Scooby saves Velma. Scooby pushes Velma, and they go for a little slide. The Snow Ghost sends some dynamite down after them. They meet back up with the others and see Ghost Shaggy, but Shaggy then falls into some water, washing off paint. Scooby slams Shaggy into the floor and puts a bucket over his head, and while he gets into a barrel to hide from the Snow Ghost. The ghost chases the others now. They hide behind logs, losing him. Daphne pops out of a log with some jewels. The boys jump into their snow car. They drive on thin ice, freezing themselves while doing so. Velma and Fred break them out. They get a bucket of water and trusts Scooby to get it done. And when the monster appears, Scooby throws it, but the water instantly freezes. Ghost goes to throw him, but Shaggy slingshots a snowball, hitting Scooby and the monster, having them roll down the mountain. Others get engulfed with the snowball too. Then they hit a rock wall. The mask falls off, revealing
Mr. Greenway!
And then a couple seconds later, we see Mr. Lee and Mr. Greenway tied up. We learn that they did it together. The gang give us their plan.
Reach over here would bring the stolen jewels to Greenway in a suitcase.
Then Greenway would send them down the river and across the border, hidden in these hollowed-out logs.
He disguised himself as the Snow Ghost. He got the idea when Funanchi told him that wild story.
And they're housed.
Yeah, he even made it look like he could fly. How did he do that?
Transparent plastic scenes. They're almost impossible to see at night.
And then Scooby tests it out and goes into a wall, says Scooby Doo, and the episode ends. My thoughts on this episode. This one from Scooby Doo, Where Are You? It feels the most nostalgic to me. Like, I remember playing it on, like, one of those DVD players that you would play, like, in the car. Or even just, like, this one just feels nostalgic for me for some reason. That's why it's my favorite of this series. I know I had another one. I know I said another one in this video ranking Scooby Doo series, and my favorite episode is the Spooky Space Coke. And some of those will line up, some of those won't from that video and this video. And also, I don't know how they got Mr. Lee, unless that was a two-person costume. I don't know why Mr. Lee would just volunteer himself to get tied up. Because, like, did they go to his door and be like, hey, Mr. Lee, we know what you did, so can you just join Mr. Greenway over here and get tied up too? Because, like, why would you do that? Why would he just volunteer himself to get tied up? Like, is it his kink? I don't know. But anyway, I know it's a cartoon. I shouldn't care about it, but it's just weird. But you know what's weirder? Being laughed at after losing your friends. Yeah, they did that in this episode. When Velma gets taken and when Shaggy falls down a chute and he's freaking the frick out. They just put a laugh track over that, and I thought that was pretty weird. And like, why would you do that? Am I supposed to be laughing? I'm not. He just lost his friends. That's super traumatic. Why would you put a laugh track over that? Anyway, let's get on to the next episode from the new Scooby Doo movies, The Mystery of Haunted Island. This episode starts off with the gang driving to...
How much further to Picnic Island, Velma?
Scooby comes out of the picnic basket. Shaggy can't find any food. And Fred can't keep driving because they run out of gas. They go to a shack hoping to get a fill-up. They go inside. Shaggy hears...
I heard something.
And Velma makes fun of him for it.
Something. Hey, that's a good tongue twister. Something.
They see something thumping, and then Scooby gets hit by it. Underneath where the ball was coming from is the Globetrotters are in there practicing for their big game tomorrow. They hear more thumping. After some door tug of war, the gang see the Globetrotters. The Globetrotters join the gang on their excursion as the eyeballs follow them out. Their boat leaves, but hands move a sign to another boat. They go aboard. Then they realize...
Hey, that's funny. There's no one aboard. No ticket seller. No captain. No crew. No passenger.
And look at this!
The Haunted Island Queen.
The boys try to escape. The boat gets unhooked and untied and starts to leave the dock. They split up and search the boat. The Globetrotters be dumb by losing the anchor and losing the wheel. A Globetrotter says,
Whoever's had this crew, the world would still be flat.
in this day and age, you can't say that type of thing. The trio find the engine room and they find 2 hands steering the wheel. Velma says,
Time for all hands on deck.
and then Daphne says,
Except you two.
and they didn't add the laugh track. Even though they add laugh tracks later in the episode. While making pizza, a weight drops from above. The boys get reminded where they're going, and then the boat arrives to the island. They abandon the ship. They go to a mansion, and then they run inside. They walk by some statues that come alive, scaring Scooby and Shaggy. They go to rooms to sleep for the night. More statues come to life. I don't think they do anything on the episode. But the Globetrotters say goodnight, and they sleep with a knight. Curly gets taken into the bed, and the Globetrotters try to help him. But he got into the suit somehow. And then they fall down, trapped hole under the bed. Scooby and Shaggy get spooked by a window, a clock, something knitting, a ghost outside the window, and a rhino statue. And then when flicked, they end up outside. The trio check up on the boys and the Globetrotters. The Globetrotters fell into a library, and they start looking around. Books float off the shelf into a pile, and the Globetrotters notice the glow. The boys, their whole thing now is to try to find another way inside. The trio find glowing footprints, and the Globetrotters find glowing handprints into a passageway clock. They follow those, and then everyone meets back up. They follow the ghost hands and notice they're people. The boys clog the chimney, causing the people to be smoked out. The Globetrotters grab them and are revealed to be
It's the owner of the Scorpions! And the coach and trainer.
They give us their reasoning.
We wanted to keep you Globetrotters from sleeping tonight. So you'd be too tired tomorrow to win the game.
Trio go inside and uncover their hat.
Why, it's nothing but luminous paint, cardboard statues, wires, and sheets.
The sun rises, but the Globetrotters fall asleep. At the stadium, the boys are still asleep, and then they lose the first half 42-0. Fred sparks an idea for Shaggy, and he gets ice, and they douse them in ice. Then antics occur, having them come back. Curly snores, getting the final point for the game. Scooby eats all the winning hot dogs, and he says the thing, and the episode ends. My thoughts on this episode. Again, another nostalgic trip for me. I also remember going to a basketball game with other Globetrotters, but they weren't Globetrotters. I don't think they were the Globetrotters. I think they were just another team. But they were more like the Globetrotters by putting on a show than playing the game. There was an animation error when they were on the boat. Scooby is sitting on top of the anchor roll-up thing, and it's a rope at first. But then as they're getting rid of it, it's a chain. And speaking of animation, they reused a lot of it during the ice scene. The slipping on ice, on a close-up on the feet, and then of Shaggy and Scooby getting the ice. And then, I also have another thought that I didn't write down, is what are they going to do with the coaches? I've been watching this guy that does legal analytics on things. I haven't watched the one for the new movies, so I don't know if they would be charged. How are the coach, trainer, and owner at the game, even though they just literally tried to sabotage the Globetrotters? Like, what? They would just delay the game because of that, right? Like, I don't know. That's just weird. Anyway, those are all my thoughts. So, let's go on to the next episode from the Scooby Doo show, A Scary Night with a Snow Beast Fright. The episode starts off with an old man walking in a snowstorm, then gets grabbed by the Snow Beast. With the gang, we learn that the old man was Professor Kruger, and that he needs them for something. They see a totem pole and are freaked out by them. They go skiing, but Scooby fails to do so. They make it to the Eskimo village and find destroyed igloos. They split and search the igloos. The boys get spooked by a polar bear and a hung fish. They find a warm pot and try to follow the person's trail. In the pot were just jammies. Scooby tries finding the others, but falls into a massive footprint. Scooby Doo demonstrates what he saw, and somehow it's an actual giant paw print. An Eskimo comes on a dog sled, and Scooby finds some love. We learn this Eskimo's name is Manuk. Manuk gives us the backstory on why the Snow Beast could possibly be attacking.
Why did it attack? Our ancient legends say the great beast comes to life when man invades the sacred lands of the north. The great beast was angered when we built our village on sacred land. Now we must go, or the Snow Beast will destroy us.
They go to the professor's hut and meet Shaw Baptiste, professor's assistant. He rides off. They go inside. Velma finds a paper of the totem poles. Scooby checks the door to the Snow Beast. The Snow Beast shakes the hut. He sets it back down, obviously. They all run and hide. Scooby hides in an igloo. Scooby then plays a game with those igloos of shell game, moving into different igloos with a sleight of body. Instead of sleight of hand. Yeah, whatever. Then Manuk gets taken by the Snow Beast. They hop on his dog sled and go to the totem poles. There they find black snow, and a sound comes from the totem poles. The monster comes, interrupting Velma. They run off. Scooby bumps into the Snow Beast, gets thrown into the totem poles. He goes up the poles. He tricks the beast a few times. Then he's scared to come down. He gets frozen by the snow on top of him and the wind. And then after he falls down from the top of it, he gets a kiss from his dog lover and melts. They follow the tracks to an ice cave. Scooby slips and they all slide down. They go to try to climb up, but the snow beast is at the top. They find lightened tunnels and split up. The trio find a submarine. Velma picks up some black snow and says,
I think these clues are finally beginning to add up.
the boys find the snow beast, they become dentists, and mess with the monster a little bit. The trio find the professor and Chief Manook. They get outside and set a trap. Scooby has to lure the beast onto the ice. He does, and the snow beast slides into a totem pole, revealing an oil derrick. And then the snow beast damages himself enough to reveal
Run by Baptiste, the professor's assistant.
everyone gives us his motive.
Baptiste came across the black snow while doing research for Professor Kruger, and he realized there was a huge oil pool there.
And because it was on Eskimo land, he took advantage of their legend about the snow beast to scare them away.
Then he and a driller from the Alaskan pipeline built the derricks during the night, disguised them as totem poles,
And began smuggling oil out beneath the ice in converted submarines.
Like the professor became suspicious. So Baptiste carried him off with his snow beast and locked him up, just like Chief Manook.
He says the thing.
And I would have made millions if it hadn't been for you meddling kids.
Scooby tries to impress his girl dog, but fails, but also succeeds. My thoughts on this. It's another nostalgic one for me, and it's the one I remember the most. Yet, I totally forgot about the submarine plot. I also think that this is their first time dealing with a big monster. I don't know. So, like, the Scooby Doo show and Scooby Doo Where Are You kind of mixed together for me. So I don't know if this really is their first time running into a giant monster. But I haven't seen all of Where Are You, the show that came out before this, to see if it really is their first time dealing with a giant monster. But if it is, that's another reason why I remember this episode so much, or love this episode so much, is because it's their first time dealing with a giant monster. And yes, it's a second cold episode. It's the last cold episode. But anyway, and this one lines up with the other video, I believe. But my favorite episode is A Scary Night with a Snow Beast Fright. And yeah, it's a dinosaur ghost. It's a dinosaur monster, and it's so good. On to my next favorite episode from a pup named Scooby Doo. Scooby Dude. This episode starts off with a shot of a cool looking sun that pans down to a marine institute. The gang arrive on bikes. They're here because
Her Aunt Thelma's the head of the Marine Institute, and it seems that their dolphins are disappearing.
Fred jumps the gun on wanting to split up. Daphne's like, hey Fred, kind of jump the gun. The boys set up camp and dance a little bit. Daphne kind of ruins the party and ruins the mood, but then the gang are pranked by Red Herring. Red gets pinched by a crab and runs off. We then see Velma's Aunt Thelma. She gives us the possible reasoning of her dolphins disappearing.
The monster may be scaring them away.
Then she shows them around. We meet Skipper the dolphin, which is the last one around, and plays with Scooby a little bit. After Scooby shows off a trick, the headless skateboarder rolls by. They all run into the aquarium and hide either in the fish tank or in a chest. Then we hear Skipper getting taken. Scooby gets a scent. They follow it to hot dogs. Velma finds a clue, which is jelly beans, and then they follow it to turkey. Red scares them once again. Then we see Sandy Sneakers show up to kind of catch Red in his crime. Her car leaks and has scuba gear and oxygen tanks. Her reasoning?
Well, that's because
A surfer comes in named Gnarly Charlie, and he kind of enjoys the monster a little bit. They go to Al's skateboard-orama. They meet Al, and they introduce themselves. Al's not a great skateboarder, as we are told, and they have a look around. They go to a shed, but are scared off before they can go inside. They get cornered. But then Velma throws down a ramp, and then the skateboarder goes flying. But he doesn't stay away for long. They gear up for the chase, and they ride off. They go back to the hut at night. A fourth wall break tells us that the place is messy, and then when Daphne gets her hands on a vacuum, she cleans up. Inside the hut, there are a ton of trophies saying,
Fast track Al.
Velma pops open her computer to dig up info on Al. She finds out he was an international skateboard champion, but he got involved with drugs. Brother, what? They go back to Al's skateboard Orama, and he basically says his life was ruined because he met the wrong people. So then we feel sorry for him. Scooby gets scared by Red in a bush, hiding from Sandy, and hires the Scooby Doo detective agency to clear his name. They go underwater to find one last thing. They find Red again, and a cave. The skateboarder comes out of the cave, which cues our song and chase. They go inside the cave and find the missing dolphins. Scooby calls for Skipper, while Fred and Velma find some funny tech. Daphne finds drug pouches on the dolphins. They go back up to the surface. They go back to the shed to lure the skateboarder. Scooby steps on a skate and ruins the plan, but still manages to trap the skateboarder. Inside the head is a speaker. They give us a suspect list. Velma takes off the costume to reveal. Everyone gives us his plan.
Al's part of a drug smuggling gang. They've been using the stolen dolphins to transport their drugs. He wanted to scare people away so no one would see the dolphins.
Yeah, and like he lied about not being able to skateboard to keep people from suspecting him.
Sandy was in on it with Al, and Gnarly Charlie is an undercover officer. Fred says,
And they both wanted us to believe that Red was the monster.
she says the thing.
And we would have gotten away with it if it weren't for those pesky kids.
They return to the Institute. Red doesn't want to pay up, so Scooby Doo pushes him into the dolphin enclosure. My thoughts on this episode. While when I was a kid, I loved skateboarding. Now that I'm 23, I don't like it as much. And also when I was a kid, I had a JJ toy from Rob Dyrdek's Wild Grinders. You probably never heard of the show, but I remember watching it. I remember having that little big toy. He was a golden one, I believe, too. And hey, the What's New Scooby Doo episode is not San Francisco, because that one's a skateboarding episode too, doesn't mean I like it. But my favorite episode is kind of close enough to that episode. I also watched this episode a few months ago. I must have been writing one of my books or something. I had no clue that there was a drug operation in this episode. And it's like a message to kids to not do drugs. Because they say, ew, to drugs and how disgusting it is. And then that it ruined Al's life because he got into drugs. They actually say the word drugs and they don't just say like substance or whatever. Which is really cool that they did that, but it's also really weird for a kid's show. Also, it was super easy to deduct who did it because a skateboarder man and then there's a skateboarder monster. It's kind of obvious. Those are my little bit of thoughts there for you and the reasoning why I like this episode. Now, let's get on to our next episode from What's New Scooby Doo Roller Coaster Ride. This episode starts off with a water ride getting ruined by the roller coaster. Then we cut to Shaggy playing a roller coaster game that...
If it weren't for that game, Shaggy couldn't have won us all free tickets to Thrill Ride.
Shaggy can't wait to meet Chris and Terry, the creators of the park. They then arrive and meet our Chris and Terry, which they're kind of disappointed because they're like, you're females, you guys can't make a park. So hey. That's also just another like little tiny thing that's like, hey, if you're a female, you can do anything. They are making his coaster idea, an all-you-can-eat coaster. They basically get park passes so they can ride all the rides they want and get all the food they want. Terry then roasts Chris about her ideas.
Well, All You Can Hurl is going to be a great ride. This is as cool as anything my sister's ever designed.
The trio go on the Sky Ride, meeting the kid that gets no fun. While in the Sky Tunnel, the roller coaster opens the floor to the fan, and they fall towards it. Daphne jams it with her belt. They get info of the roller coaster by Sam. Velma finds green fur. Sam hates the newer type rides and threatens them.
Strange things have been happening here. If you're not careful, the next ride could be your last.
The duo go on a slingshot type ride, seeing the same kid. The roller coaster cuts a rope and they go flying. Velma searches Chris and Terry's room. She finds a brush with more green hair. Terry then comes in and knows of the ghoster. A reporter named Harry comes in and starts interrogating Chris. Chris blames Harry of the roller coaster. The boys almost die, then they crash near Fred and Daphne. They then go on another ride, the rocket coaster, walking by that same kid. The kid gives a warning.
I'll get even. You'll see. You'll all see.
Velma then tries warning the gang of the tampered ride, and Fred says,
That's what we're counting on.
after a loop, they almost crash into the roller coaster. They fly into the water. Velma finds clue number 3 in the wrench. Chris gets accused, then she accuses Harry. They go to where the rides get fixed and see Sam. Fred jumps the gun and accuses Sam. He tells us they only looked broken. I'll give you my thoughts on that. Fred then gets an idea. The boys walk to a payphone with all the suspects listening. Roller coaster rises from behind the payphone, and that cues our song and chase. And this is part where it's kind of similar to the last episode. The ghoster fails a trick and skates right into a tent, washing out with some stuffed animals. Fred unmasks it to be. She gives us her reasoning.
I always did all the work, bringing your crazy designs to life, never getting to build any of my own. Did I ever get any credit or even a thank you?
She says the thing.
And I would have gotten away with it too, if it weren't for you meddling kids.
But sadly, she did get away with it. Then Fred says you did nothing illegal. And the kid then gets told one last time that he's not tall enough to fit inside the costume. That's why he wasn't a suspect. Shaggy then comes in and lets him ride his coaster. Not like that. Kid, not like that. Okay. Alright, then the episode ends. My thoughts on this episode. I probably loved this episode. One, yes, it's nostalgic, but also because I probably related to the kid. The kid was never tall enough to go on any ride, so I'm like, I'm never tall enough to go on any rides either. And then, also, what in God's name do you mean that they only looked broken or looked sabotaged? First off, the roller coaster, cut a rope on that water ride, and also cut a rope on the Scooby and Shaggy ride, and they went flying. And another one, she destroyed the controls to a fan that made people fall towards the said fan, and then unscrewing a bolt on a fast coaster. That one can be excused in probably the water ride because, hey, they landed in water. But all those other two are attempt at murder. So what do you mean, Fred, that she did nothing illegal? She literally almost tried to kill you guys with a fan. And 2, she framed her sister. Gosh, that was the most. I mean, I've watched this episode like countless times, but this is the only real time I've like watched the episode. So it's just weird how you're gonna say that they only looked sabotaged. And I thought Lights Camera Monster was the only episode that made the person get away with their crimes. Because it's another one of those episodes that's like, oh, you did nothing illegal. You didn't do anything terrible. Anyway, on to my next favorite episode from Mystery Incorporated. Mystery Solvers Club State Final. This episode starts off with a sick Scooby. Fred mentions
The Mystery Solver State Finals is tomorrow. Every teen mystery solving group from around the country will be there.
Velma offends Scooby by saying he's a sidekick. Scooby gets some should I, then wakes up in a new animation style. They're all excited and go to the state final, driving by other cartoon cars. Inside, we see Funky Phantom Crew, Jabberjaw and the Neptunes, the Speed Bugs, and then the Captain Caveman and the Teen Angels. After the intro, we see the sidekicks hanging out on the sidelines. The competition starts with a speech. As Principal Quinlan is about to say what the mystery is, Lord Infernicus appears, threatening everyone. Then he disappears, leaving the sidekicks all alone. Infernicus then tells them,
Your friends are hidden somewhere in this building. All communication with the outside world is cut off. If you try to leave or call for help, you'll never see them again. You have until sunrise to find them. Good luck!
Scooby helps Jabberjaw stop freaking out. Angel splits up the sidekicks. Captain Caveman does his thing and bounces around the gym. Scooby finds clue number 1, wood shavings. Back with the trio. They go on the roof. Speed Buggy starts climbing up. Back with the sidekicks. They find guinea pigs dressed as their mystery members. Scooby figures out about they're not their members by giving Shaggy a Scooby snack, and Shaggy rejects it. Funky Phantom says,
What are you saying? Of course it is. Let's face facts. Our friends are gone, possibly never coming back even.
Funky then grabs his team, and heads to the library to try to fix them. Jabberjaw and Caveman grab the others. Scooby questions some things.
Don't you think we found them a little easy? And like guinea pigs.
Funky then goes around the corner. With a flash of fire comes Lord Infernicus around that same corner. They run to a dead end. Lord Infernicus tells them time is running out, then disappears again. Scooby finds clue number 2, the paper that reads,
Something about a ship leaving from Crystal Cove Docks.
back with Buggy climbing. They find a scrambler box. Angel smashes it and Quinn tries her phone. Lord Infernicus appears, having Buggy fall into a pool. They save Speed Buggy with car CPR. They go off to Quinn's office. They almost crash into the others, but then they end up crashing into her office. She calls Bronson to get to the ducks, but he thinks it's a prank, so he hangs up. So now they're on their own. They go to the docks as a ship is leaving. Jabberjaw and Captain Caveman jump into the water and stop the ship. Lord Infernicus drives off from the ship. Buggy catches up. Lord Infernicus almost kills them. Scooby sees Shaggy, proving his theory from earlier. Quinn throws the guinea pigs, covering Lord Infernicus' windshield. He pulls aside, getting trapped between the groups. Jabberjaw puts out the flames, and Caveman ties him up thanks to a bird holding a rope. The mystery teens get let out. Scooby unmasks Lord Infernicus to be. He gives us his reasoning.
I was sick of being a sidekick, resentful even. Wanted to be the boss, in charge even, with my own sidekicks.
His backstory.
I'm Jonathan Wellington Muttlewall, actor. I was behind in my rent at the wine. So a friend told me about this clock I could swat in. When they found me and thought I was a ghost, I figured, why not? Ghost Kid got me 3 hearts and a cot, but I got tired of taking a back seat, don't you know?
And his motive.
The plan was to ship everyone off to Africa, where there is a desperate need for teenage mystery solvers.
His cat gets revenge. They cheer for the sidekicks. Scooby falls, and with a blurry POV shot, transitions back to the other art style. Scooby was out for days. The state finals was pushed back, so Scooby didn't miss it. Scooby talks about the others, but they're just his toys. The chairman comes to check on Scooby, and Scooby hides from hearing his voice. Chairman says,
Was it something I said?
Then the episode ends. My thoughts on this episode. I love this episode mainly because it goes back to the OG art style, and that they bring in all the other mystery solvers and the sidekicks. It was just super cool to see that. And it was also a great meaning. Like, if you're a sidekick or something less, or you feel like something less, then you can still overcome a situation. Also, Velma is a freaking villain of this episode. If she wouldn't have said that he's a sidekick, then he probably wouldn't have had this dream. Anyway, there was also probably an adult joke when Quinlan brings Buggy back to life by blowing into his mouth, and then she gets all like overexcited and wants to bring more people back to life. And I'm like, does she want to blow more people? Anyway, I'm probably looking too far into it. So let's just move on to my next episode from Be Cool Scooby Doo, Renn Scare. The episode starts off with people setting up for a royal feast. Then someone's phone goes off. The king fires that person and then talks slander on how he wants it to be really authentic to the history. And then he also mocks a jester's costume. But
Sir, we haven't hired the jester yet.
so the jester jumps the chandelier and then gives us a rhyme with threats.
Make your plans, decorate this room. All you do is gild your tomb. This feast under pale full moon, you shall meet untimely doom.
And then the intro rolls. After the intro, we learn the gang are joining Velma's Renaissance Fair. But it's not really her Renaissance Fair, so we get a little history lesson on why it kind of is her Renaissance Fair. Fred's excited to slay another mythical beast, and the others also have some other dreams that I can't really remember. But Velma tries to warn them of the dumpster fire that they're going into. Velma and Daphne argue about history accuracy. The king is in a meeting and wants to cancel the feast. Harvey walks off past the gang, and the king tells the gang of the Jester Monster. But they can't just be there as normal town folk. They have to get jobs. So Fred is hired as the Jester, the boys are hired as food taste testers, and Daphne is hired as a maid, basically. The boys take their job very seriously by putting hands over their eyes, keeping an eye out for anything suspicious. They try to get some early feast, but are stopped by way of sound and a jester poking through the smoke. Terrifyingly, I may add. They fling some sauce in his eye and run off. The others investigate the medieval museum. Then Francis appears, complaining about the king's dedication to detail and struggles to say fun. The boys run in and tell the others what happened. Then Velma gives us the history of the Jester Monster. Laughs and rhymes spook the gang. Then the Jester whips through the painting. That's very scary again. They run up. They split, and the boys wonder what the others do when the monster always chooses them. They dress up as directors and judge the Jester and send him back on his way. He stupidly makes it all the way home before realizing it was just a ruse to get away. The maid falls out of a barrel of infernal objects, and then Velma ruins toys for kids because the stuff wasn't made in the past, and those things didn't even exist in the past. Then the feast starts. The boys test the food, almost eating
A small metal thingy in the stew.
and then Francis has Daphne stall so he can find real entertainment. So he goes off. She gets accused of being a witch, and then laughs echo through the halls.
Not me.
We know, Fred. It's obviously not you. Then we get another rhyme threat. The Jester jumps down, almost hitting the king. Fred shouts, "Run!" and that cues our music and chase. During that, they bring the tent down. Now they're locked up, and the weirdest, well, probably historically accurate. Velma tells why it's so boring. The past was hard, so we wanted to make people appreciate the past. They easily get out and say they need to go beat traffic. And then another feast takes place with hidden food from the van. Velma tells the king of a plan. Candles go out and the Jester appears. Fred misses, but Velma doesn't by hitting the Jester into a pillory. Is that how you say it? That weird thing that you put your arms in, your head in? That thing? They get on stage for some reason. Fred unmasks it to be... The gang recap the mystery with a rhyme.
A king who ordered authenticity. His investors' plan, make changes drastic. Add to the fair, nice and beast fantastic.
His plan the Lord outright rejected.
So investor desperate puts on a mask and becomes a monster from the past. A battery may glow his glaring eye, until it fell onto blackberry pie.
He says the thing,
Blah, 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 you meddling kid.
and he gets taken away. Then the king breaks his own authenticity and answers his own phone. My thoughts on this episode. The main reason why I like this episode, or I love this episode, I played a jester in one of my high school plays. Be Cool Scooby Doo was like kind of airing at this time, something like that. And so that's why I kind of like it, because hey, I was playing a jester. Scooby Doo and Shaggy are running from a jester. So yeah. And then the jester appearances, I already said this in the recap, but the jester appearances from Through the Smoke and Through the Painting, that was truly terrifying. And then I said Through the Smoke and Through the Painting, and then I also watched The Greatest Showman this last week, and I could only think of the Million Dreams song.
Through the dark, through the door, through where no one's...
I love that in every episode of this season, I think, is that the split off bit of where the monster always chooses the boys, and then the boys always have to say something. I really like that. There should really be a compilation on YouTube, but I didn't see anything. So maybe, in the future, if I can ever find Be Cool Scooby Doo, then maybe I'll do that. And I have a thing here that tells me every single day that something disappears. So hopefully, in the future, I can find where Scooby Doo is and keep doing this stuff. Anyway, let's just end this whole video. It's long enough. So there you have it. Those are all of my favorite episodes of Scooby Doo that I haven't talked about yet. What episodes do you love? Or just one episode in general that you really enjoy? Maybe next year I'll talk about my favorite movies, if I can find them. And you'll just have to wait and see if I ever do. In the meantime, click here to watch all the recaps I've done on this channel. And then click here for my latest video. And then subscribe so you don't miss out on the hope or make more Scooby-Doo review videos. It all depends if I can find it or not. So yeah. Peace.